The morning sun cast long shadows across the United Nations plaza as Dr. Kim Gulu hurried through the security checkpoint. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her identification badge. Today was the day humanity would meet its first visitors from the stars. She had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing for this moment. As Earth's leading expert in xenobiology, she would be among the first humans to study alien life. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders as she rode the elevator to the observation deck. Ambassador Lee Min-ho was already there, his gray suit pressed to perfection despite the early hour. He had been chosen to represent South Korea in the historic First Contact proceedings. His weathered face showed the strain of recent weeks, ever since the alien ship had appeared on radar screens around the world. "Any word from the other delegations?" Jua asked, joining him at the reinforced windows. "The Americans are nervous," Min-ho replied quietly. "The Russians are suspicious. The Chinese are, well, being Chinese. But we're all here, and that's what matters." They watched the sky together, waiting. The alien vessel had been orbiting Earth for 7 days, broadcasting peaceful intentions in every human language. The message was simple. They came in peace. They brought gifts, and they wanted to talk. At precisely 9 o'clock, the ship began its descent. Gi-woo pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. The vessel was unlike anything in human imagination. It moved through the air like liquid mercury, its silver hull catching the sunlight and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. No visible engines, no obvious weapons, just smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. "Beautiful," she whispered. Ship settled onto the specially prepared landing pad with impossible grace. No dust was stirred, no sound was made. It simply came to rest as if it had always been there. A section of the hull dissolved like morning mist, revealing an opening. 3 figures emerged, walking with fluid steps that seemed to barely touch the ground. They wore no spacesuits, no protective gear. They breathed Earth's air as if it were their own. The leader was tall and elegant, with skin that shifted between silver and gold in the changing light. Its eyes were the color of starlight, deep and ancient. When it spoke, its voice carried clearly across the plaza, despite the distance. "I am Kaelvim of the Al3," it said, and somehow every person present understood the words in their own language. "We greet you, children of Earth, in the name of the Galactic Confederation." President Park Sun-ho stepped forward, flanked by security guards who looked tiny next to the alien visitors. "Welcome to Earth," he said, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of the moment. "I am President Park, speaking for all humanity." Kaelvim's features shifted in what might have been a smile. "We have traveled far to meet you. Your world sings with life, with potential. We bring gifts from 12 worlds that have known peace for 1,000 years. The gifts were produced from what seemed like empty air. Crystalline devices that hummed with inner energy, metal spheres that glowed with soft light, and art objects that hurt to look at directly because of their impossible beauty. This is a medical regenerator," Kelvin explained, holding up a crystal that pulsed with blue light. "It can regrow lost limbs, cure disease, extend life. This atmospheric processor can clean your polluted air in hours. And these empathic resonators will help your species understand each other's emotions, preventing the conflicts that have plagued your history." Dr. Cho Yuna, Earth's chief medical officer, stepped forward with wonder in her eyes. "May I?" asked, reaching toward the crystal. "Of course," Kelvin replied. "We give freely, as friends should." The moment Yuna touched the device, her face transformed. Whatever she experienced through that contact left her speechless, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's incredible," she finally managed. "I can feel ... everything. Every cell in my body, every tiny injury, every imperfection, and it knows how to fix them all."
Oh.
The demonstrations continued throughout the day. Atmospheric processor cleared the smog from the air above the plaza in minutes. The empathic resonators allowed people who had never met to understand each other's feelings instantly. The art pieces seemed to sing with harmonies that touched the soul, But it was the conversation that evening that would haunt Guy for months to come. She found herself alone with Calvin in the UN's private dining room, sharing a meal of Earth foods that the alien found fascinating. "Your species has such potential," Calvin said, studying a simple apple as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "But this capacity for violence, it troubles the Council." "We're trying to do better," Jiwoo replied. "The wars, the conflicts, most of us want them to end. Yes, we have observed your efforts toward peace. But deep in your genetic memory, the patterns remain. The Council has seen what happens when such impulses are not properly guided." Something in the way Calvin said guided made Jiwoo's skin crawl, but she pushed the feeling aside. These beings had traveled across the galaxy to help humanity. They offered gifts that could transform civilization itself. "What do you need?" "From us?" she asked. "Only proof that you can evolve beyond your violent nature. Join our confederation and learn the peace that has blessed 12 worlds for 1,000 years." As Jiwoo walked home that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. The aliens were perfect, their gifts were miraculous, and their intentions seemed pure. So why did she feel like she was walking into a trap? Park Hyjin rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the computer screens in the underground bunker. For 3 weeks, she had been watching the alien ships in space, counting them, tracking their movements. What she had discovered made her stomach turn cold with fear. The Situation Room was deep beneath Sol, hidden from the aliens above. The walls were thick concrete, and the air tasted stale. Emergency lights cast harsh shadows across the faces. Of the people gathered around the table, these were the leaders who would decide humanity's fate. "Show them the numbers," General Han Seokwa said quietly. He was an old man who had fought in many wars. But his hands shook as he spoke. Hyjin touched her screen, and the wall lit up with images from space. 17 silver ships hung above, Earth like deadly ornaments. But that wasn't the worst part. "These are the ships we can see," she said, pointing to the obvious threats. "But our deep space radars are picking up something else. Gravity readings that don't match what we can see. There are more ships out there, maybe 40 or 50, hiding behind some kind of invisibility screen." President Park Sun-ho leaned forward. In his chair, his face was gray with exhaustion. In just 3 weeks, he had aged years. "How many total?" "At least 60 ships," Hyjin replied. "Maybe more. And they're not just sitting there. They're moving into attack positions." Dr. Ruman J. stood up slowly. He had been one of the peace negotiators, one of the people who had believed the aliens when they said they came in friendship. Now he felt like a fool. "I've been studying their past conquests," he said, his voice bitter. "Worlds all. Taken the same way? First, they offer gifts and friendship. Then they study the planet for weaknesses. Finally, they attack without warning." "How long do we have?" asked Admiral Kim Hoon-soo. 2 weeks at most," Rue replied, "maybe less. They follow a pattern. First, they destroy the power plants and communication towers. Then they send out flying machines they call pacification drones. These machines spray sleeping gas over the cities. By the time people wake up, it's too late." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The beautiful aliens with their wonderful gifts had been lying from the very beginning. They weren't here to help humanity join a peaceful alliance. They were here to conquer Earth. "What about the other countries?" President Park asked. "Are they ready to fight?" Admiral Kim checked his reports. "The Americans are moving their warships into the Pacific Ocean. The Russians are preparing their nuclear missiles. The Chinese are digging underground bunkers all across their country. Everyone knows what's coming." But there was something else, something that made the situation even worse. Dr. Lim Soo-yang, computer expert who had been studying the alien technology, had found hidden programs in the gifts they had given to humanity. "The medical devices aren't just healing people," she said, her voice shaking. "They're also scanning them. Every person who used the healing crystals had their DNA copied and sent to the alien ships. The air cleaners aren't just removing pollution. They're also releasing tiny robots into the atmosphere that can track every human on Earth. The worst discovery was yet to come. The empathic resonators, The devices that were supposed to help people understand each other's emotions were doing something far more sinister. They're not just reading emotions, Su Yang continued. They're mapping human brain patterns. They're learning how our minds work so they can control us. I found evidence that they're developing some kind of mind control virus, something that will make humans naturally obedient to their commands. General Han stood up, his old bones creaking. So they don't just want to conquer us. They want to turn us into slaves. Worse than slaves, Su Yang replied. They want to change what we are, make us into something that can't even think about rebellion. The room erupted in angry voices. Some leaders wanted to attack immediately. Others wanted to try negotiating. A few suggested that humanity should surrender and hope for mercy. It was Agent Choi Dae-yoon who spoke the words that would change everything. What if we don't fight them the way they expect? He said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Was a spy, a man who had spent years in the shadows, learning secrets and fighting invisible wars. They've studied our armies, he continued. They know about our tanks and jets and missiles. They've prepared for a normal war. But what if we don't give them a normal war? What do you mean? Asked President Park. They've been watching the clean version of humanity, the version we show to the world. Our governments are official military. Forces our public face. But they haven't seen the other side. The criminals, the gangs, the people who live in the shadows. They haven't seen what we're really capable of when we're fighting for survival. General Han's eyes grew bright with, understanding, you're talking about guerrilla warfare. Underground resistance, making every street, every building, every person into a weapon. I'm talking about showing them the monsters they've created, Daeon replied. They wanted to meet humanity. Let's introduce them to the parts of humanity they never bothered to study. The plan that emerged from that meeting would have horrified the peaceful aliens above. It involved criminals and soldiers working together. It meant turning every city into a trap. It required ordinary people to become killers. But as the alien ships moved closer to Earth, humanity prepared to show their visitors what happened when you threatened 7 billion people who had nowhere left to run. Dr. Beak. Jin Young walked through the dark tunnels beneath Seoul, his footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. The old subway system had been closed for repairs months ago, but now it served a different purpose. The tunnels had been turned into secret laboratories where humanity's darkest weapons were being born. The air smelled of chemicals and fear. Jin Young had once been a peaceful scientist, studying plants and trying to make the world cleaner. Now he was creating poisons that could kill aliens in ways that would make devils weep. Are the gas weapons ready? He asked his assistant, Kim. Thyung. The young man nodded, his face pale under the harsh electric lights. All 3 types. The airborne poison can be released through air vents. The water poison can be put into their drinking systems. And the contact poison can be painted on any surface they might touch. Ginyang felt sick thinking about what they had created. During the months when the aliens pretended to be friends, human scientists had studied them carefully. They had learned that the aliens breathed through special filters in their noses. These filters, which helped them process different atmospheres, also made them weak against certain gases that would barely hurt humans. How many people will these weapons kill? Taeyong asked quietly. Every alien on Earth will die within hours if we use these. Captain Song Hyun-woo appeared from the shadows, his military uniform dirty and torn. He had been working for days without sleep, organizing the civilian resistance network. His eyes were red with exhaustion, but his voice was steady. The delivery systems are ready, he reported. We have pizza drivers who can carry weapons past alien checkpoints. Maintenance workers who know every tunnel and pipe in the city. Taxi drivers who have memorized every escape route and hiding place. The transformation of Seoul had been incredible. To watch. In just 2 weeks, the entire city had been turned into a giant trap. Construction workers had built hidden bunkers in every neighborhood. Schools had been emptied of children and filled with weapons instead. Even hospitals had been changed with secret rooms where scientists made deadly chemicals. Every ordinary person had become a potential soldier. The mailman who delivered letters, also carried explosives. The grandmother who sold vegetables in the market had grenades hidden in her cart. The teenage boy who worked at the convenience store could assemble a rifle in under 30 seconds. Agent Yu Ji-hoon had done something that amazed everyone. He had united all the criminal gangs in the world under one banner. The Japanese Yakuza, the Chinese Triads, the Russian Bratva, and hundreds of smaller gangs had all agreed to work together against the aliens. "How did you convince them, Captain?" Song asked. Ji-hoon smiled grimly. "I told them the truth. The aliens want to control everyone's mind. Even criminals value their freedom to choose their own crimes. The criminals had skills that regular soldiers didn't have. They knew how to move through cities without being seen. They knew how to get weapons and supplies without official approval. They knew how to make people disappear without leaving traces." In a warehouse across the city, former arms dealer Park Joon-ho was working with a team of mechanics to modify civilian vehicles. They were turning ordinary cars into mobile weapons platforms. A family van had been fitted with rocket launchers hidden under the seats. A school bus had been armored and equipped with machine guns. Even motorcycles were being turned into mobile bombs. "The aliens studied our military vehicles," Joon-ho explained to his team, "but they never looked at civilian cars. They won't know what hit them until it's too late." The psychological warfare division was perhaps the most terrifying part of the resistance. Dr. Kang Sung-yeon had spent years studying how trauma affected the human mind. Now he was using that knowledge to create weapons that would attack alien minds instead of their bodies. The aliens had been peaceful for so long that they've forgotten how to handle violence, he explained to his team. "Show them carefully. Chosen images of human cruelty, and their minds will simply break. They literally cannot process the concept of deliberate evil." His team had created audio and video recordings that would be broadcast directly into alien ships. The recordings showed the worst moments of human history: wars, tortures, massacres, but arranged in patterns that would cause maximum psychological damage to peaceful minds. Meanwhile, Dr. Lim Soo-yang was working on humanity's ultimate weapon. If Earth was going to lose the war, she would make sure the aliens paid a price that would haunt them forever. "It's called the Pandora virus," she explained to the War Council. "If we release it, it will spread through their entire computer network. Every ship, every world, every piece of technology they have will be infected. It won't just destroy their machines, it will corrupt their entire digital civilization." The virus was designed to learn and adapt, spreading through alien networks faster than they could stop it. It would turn their own technology against them, making their ships attack each other and their planets uninhabitable. As the final preparations were made, everyone understood that they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. They were turning humanity into something monstrous. But the alternative was slavery or extinction. The aliens above had no idea what they had awakened. They had come expecting to conquer a peaceful world. Instead, they had given 7 billion predators time to prepare for war. The morning sky over, Seoul filled with silver shapes as the alien dropships began their descent. Commander Velquin sat in the lead ship, reviewing his battle plans one last time. He had done this before on 12 different worlds. The pattern was always the same: show overwhelming force, demonstrate superior technology, and wait for the natives to surrender. He expected this conquest to be no different from the others. The first dropship touched down in Yoido, the business district of Seoul. The landing was perfect, smooth, and silent as always. Velquin smiled with satisfaction as his troops prepared to disembark. Then the ground exploded. The blast was so powerful that it shook buildings kilometers away. Park Joon-ho's team had spent weeks placing explosives throughout the subway tunnels beneath the city. The weight of the alien ship triggered sensors that set off charges planted deep underground. The entire dropship vanished in a ball of fire and smoke. "Transport 7 is gone," the communications officer reported from the flagship in orbit. "We've lost contact with all 43 crew members." Before Velquin could respond, something strange began happening to the ship's systems. The screens flickered, showing images that made no sense. Humans engaged in acts of violence so brutal that the alien crew members began to scream. Dr. Kong Sung-yin's psychological warfare had begun. The carefully designed audio and video signals were being broadcast directly into the alien ships through their own communication systems. Images showed the worst moments of human history, but arranged in patterns that would cause maximum mental damage to peaceful minds. The alien crew members, who had never seen real violence in their lives, began to collapse. Their enhanced nervous systems, so good at processing information, were overloaded by sensory input they couldn't understand. Some went into shock, others began to shake uncontrollably. A few simply shut down completely, their minds retreating into catatonic states down in the streets of Seoul. The real nightmare was just beginning. Captain Song Hyun-woo's civilian fighters emerged from hiding places throughout the city. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like ordinary people, going about their daily lives. But each one carried weapons that defied every rule of civilized warfare. An old grandmother pushed a baby carriage down the street toward a group of alien soldiers. The aliens trained to protect civilian populations moved to escort her to safety. When she pressed a button on the carriage handle, it exploded into a fountain of flame that engulfed the entire patrol. In a nearby park, children were playing games and laughing. When alien troops approached to check on their safety, the children smiled and waved. Then they detonated the explosives strapped to their bodies, their innocent faces the last thing many aliens would ever see. The Confederation had prepared for military resistance. They had studied Earth's armies, analyzed their weapons, and developed countermeasures for every known form of warfare. But they had not prepared for an entire species to abandon. Every principle of civilized combat, Agent Yu Ji-hoon coordinated the resistance from a command center hidden in the basement of a kimchi factory. His screen showed the positions of alien forces throughout the city, tracked by a network of gang members, prostitutes, and street vendors who knew every alley and hidden passage. Enemy squad moving through Myeongdong, he reported into his radio. Package delivery in progress. The package was a modified food truck driven by a man whose family had been killed in the first wave of attacks. The truck was packed with enough explosives to level a city block. When it detonated next to the alien command post, the blast created a crater 50 meters wide. Dr. Baek Jin-young's chemical weapons proved devastatingly effective. The aliens' enhanced physiology, so efficient at processing clean air, became a liability when faced with compounds designed to attack their cellular structure. Entire squads of alien soldiers collapsed as their bodies turned against them, their own genetic improvements becoming instruments of their destruction. The poisonous gases were released. Through the city's ventilation systems, the water supply was contaminated with chemicals that would kill aliens but leave humans unharmed. Even the surfaces of buildings were painted with contact poisons that would kill with a single touch. But perhaps the most effective weapon was the complete transformation of human society into a killing machine. Every civilian was a potential combatant. Every building was a potential trap. Every act of kindness was a potential deception. A group of alien soldiers, seeking medical help for their wounded, found a hospital that seemed to offer sanctuary. The doctors and nurses greeted them with smiles and promises of healing. But the medical staff had turned their knowledge of anatomy into instruments of torture. The aliens' pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears as the humans experimented on them, with cold scientific precision. In the command center, General Han Seokwa watched reports pour in from around the world. The pattern was the same everywhere. The aliens' advanced technology and superior numbers meant nothing when faced with an enemy that had no rules, no honor, and no limits. Status report from Busan called out Colonel Bae Won-ho. All alien ground forces eliminated. They're requesting permission to harvest enemy technology. Granted, Han replied. What about the orbital ships? Dr. Lim Soo-young's computer virus has infected 19 vessels. They're experiencing complete system failures. The remaining ships are pulling back to defensive positions. The aliens had expected to conquer Earth in a matter of days. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare where every human was a potential killer, and every corner could hide death. Dr. Lim Suyang sat deep underground in her concrete bunker, watching computer screens that showed the end of the world approaching. Above her head, massive alien weapons platforms were descending through Earth's atmosphere like angry metal gods. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy entire continents. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, making final adjustments to the computer virus she had spent months creating. This virus wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's last desperate gamble for survival. "How much time do we have?" asked President Park Sun-ho. The leader looked like he had aged 20 years in the past few weeks. His face was thin and gray, his eyes sunken from living underground like a rat. 17 minutes until they start firing," Suyang replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "The energy readings are off the charts. Each weapon platform can crack a continent in half." The bunker shook as explosions echoed from the surface. The war had been raging for weeks, and Seoul was nothing but ruins now. Millions of people were dead. The survivors lived like animals in underground tunnels, fighting a war that seemed impossible to win. "Execute Pandora Protocol," President Park ordered. Suyang took a deep breath and pressed the activation key. The virus she released was unlike anything that had ever existed. It didn't just attack the alien ships hovering over Earth. It reached through their quantum communication networks, spreading like wildfire to every world in their empire. The virus was designed to learn and adapt as it spread. It would corrupt every computer system, every piece of technology, every digital network the aliens had built over 1,000 years of peaceful civilization. Within seconds, the results began to show. The massive weapon platforms that had been preparing to destroy Earth suddenly went silent. Their targeting systems scrambled, showing random numbers instead of coordinates. Their power cores began to fluctuate wildly, no longer able to maintain the energy needed for planetary destruction. "It's working," whispered General Han Siakwa. Watching the tactical displays, "The alien ships are losing power." But the virus did more than just disable their weapons. It reached into the heart of their empire, corrupting the networks that connected hundreds of worlds. On planets thousands of light years away, alien cities went dark as their power grids failed. Space stations lost life support. Between stars suddenly found themselves blind and helpless in the void. The Confederation had built their entire civilization on interconnected technology. Every device talked to every other device through quantum networks that spanned the galaxy. This had made them incredibly efficient and peaceful. It also made them incredibly vulnerable to the virus that was now eating their digital foundation from within. Captain Song Hunwoo emerged from the ruins of Seoul's surface. His uniform torn and bloody, he'd been leading civilian fighters in street-to-street combat for days. His report was grim but hopeful. "The alien ground forces are retreating," he said. "Their equipment is malfunctioning. Some of their soldiers are just standing there, staring at nothing. It's like they've broken mentally." The psychological warfare had worked too well. The aliens' minds, evolved for peace and harmony, had simply shattered when faced with humanity's capacity for creative violence. Many had retreated into catatonic states rather than continue fighting against an enemy that used children as suicide bombers and turned hospitals into torture chambers. Agent Yu Ji-hoon coordinated with criminal networks around the world, receiving reports that chilled him. "The alien ships aren't just retreating," he said. "They're dying. The crews are going into some kind of sleep state. It's like they're hiding from us inside their own minds." In the underground medical centers, Dr. Cho Yuna examined, captured aliens who had survived the psychological assault. What she found disturbed her deeply. "They're not dead," she reported. "But they're not really alive either. They've experienced something their brains literally cannot process. The concept of a species that would sacrifice everything, including their own humanity, to survive. It's driven them into collective madness." The victory was complete, but the cost was becoming clear. Earth's major cities were destroyed. Hundreds of millions of people were dead. The environment was poisoned with chemical weapons. The economy was gone. The social structures that had held civilization together were in ruins. But perhaps the worst cost was what humanity had become in the process of winning children who had participated in the resistance, showed signs of severe trauma. The crimina networks that had united for the war were now turning their enhanced capabilities against each other. The biological and chemical weapons that had defeated the aliens were now contaminating the very planet they had fought to protect Dr. Beek Jin Young. The scientist who had created the poison gases spent his days trying to clean up the toxins he had released. "We opened a door that should have stayed closed," he told his assistant. "Now we have to live with what came through." 6 months after the last alien ship had fled Earth's solar system, the planet received a new message. Didn't come from the Confederation, but from something else entirely. Something that had been hunting the Confederation across the galaxy. The message was simple. It's transmitted in every human language. "We felt them die. We are coming." The hunger, the force that had driven the Confederation to become conquerors, had finally found Earth. The aliens hadn't been predators. They had been prey, running from something far worse. Agent Choi Dae-yoon, now serving as Earth's Director of Defense, read the message with growing dread. "We didn't defeat the wolf," he realized. "We defeated the sheep. And now the real wolves know where we are." The victory celebration that had never really begun was replaced by desperate preparation for a new kind of war. Earth had proven it. Could fight monsters by becoming monsters. Now they would discover what happened when those monsters attracted something even worse.